Hello, plebes. What? This is how I always dress. I can't see in the chat room because I don't have my glasses on. But stick around in the chat room and I'll be there shortly. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Why did I do that first, actually? I shouldn't have called you a plebe, Deb, nor you, Webb. You guys rhyme, except yours is actually Deborah. Frank, Matthew, Hank and Frank, you guys do rhyme without me shortening either. Rob, everybody, good to see you. Why don't we do a show? Why don't we do a thing for which I am relatively prepared? I don't know. I was talking about this earlier with somebody else and just went off, and I was like, well, I guess that's going to be the show then. So let's do that. I got no start. Hold on. All right. Here we go. No, I really don't. I don't have a cute little thing to say at the beginning. Oh, this is it. Show's over. It's ruined. Reaction to Wall Street, reaction to the fourth quarter earnings, and Apple One now in 3 sizes. It's Friday, the 30th of October, 2020, and this is macOS Can Live. If you're only getting the audio, you're missing, well, all the picture, but half the picture. Hi, everybody. It's Ken Ray welcoming you into another edition of macOS Can Live. Oh, I wish you were here live. I mean, for the people who are here live, good for you, because you see what I'm talking about. Everybody else, it's the day before Halloween, and I have treated it accordingly. Not dressed like anything scary, unless you consider ruling over the proletariat scary, in which case, woo, whatever. Second half of the show, we're going to talk about Apple One, a tiny bit about Apple One. Man, you know, Apple said on yesterday's earnings call, we're going to do Apple One, and there was nothing. Like on the other side of that, what lies madness? We don't know. Turns out it's incredibly easy, but we'll talk about that and what I'm excited about in the second half of the show. First half of the show, though, yeah, reaction to Apple's earnings. So I guess if you don't have money, or I guess if you're not a day trader, or I guess if you don't, I don't know. Look, for the past 15 plus years now, when I watch Apple, I watch it as sort of a like an exercise in critical thinking, right? I like Apple. I find their story interesting. I find a lot of the things that they've done very interesting. And so for me, it's just like watching it and watching, I don't know, watching people's reaction to it. That to me is the thing that's most fascinating. And I get a bit on some of the actions that are taken around Apple. Sometimes I get frustrated by actions that Apple takes as well, but more often than not, it's people's reaction to it. And I feel like I should learn to relax. Maybe Apple One will help me do that. Apple reported what seemed to me to be a stellar quarter yesterday. They set a September quarter record. They beat expectations. They did all of that without an iPhone. Without a new iPhone, that is, because September usually has new iPhones, right? Well, it has for the past several years anyway. And in July of this year, Apple said, listen, no new iPhone this quarter. So Wall Street had plenty of time to get ready for that. And yet, Apple shares, apologies, by the way, somebody pointed out to me yesterday, Apple shares were up to the closing bell. They were not actually up in after hours trading. Apple shares actually fell about 5% in after hours trading, according to this piece that I have from Ars Technica that I honestly want to wad up and throw away when we're done, but I need it for the show, so we won't do that yet. Apple shares were down, though, today, $6.46. Now, I think that's in addition to the 5% that it was already down. I don't think it was down that and then down some more. But Apple shares closed at 108.86. And the articles that you read in the Apple press and the articles that you read in CNBC say that is because of two things, either because Wall Street was disappointed by the fact that there was no iPhone, And I don't know how Wall Street could be disappointed by that, because Wall Street knew there wasn't going to be an iPhone. And the other reason that people give is because Apple offered no guidance for the current quarter. It is worth noting that close of trading today capped the worst month for the market this year since March. It is worth noting that we are days away from certainly the most contentious election I would be willing to bet in any of our lifetimes, and maybe in the history of the U.S. Who knows? So there's that. It's also worth noting that COVID cases are on the rise. It's worth noting that there is a world outside of what happens inside of Apple that does also affect Apple. Yes, there may have been things that were disappointing about Apple. There may have been things like certain people may have been bothered by some things that happened, but there's a lot going on besides what happened inside Apple. Now, that said, there was an article in Ars Technica that I mentioned a moment ago. I don't know who wrote it, and I'm kind of okay with that because I think I'm kind of going to bash them a tiny bit anyway. But the article in Ars Technica said Apple earnings show strong iPad and Mac sales can't make up for the iPhone. How? How does it show that? With no iPhone, they beat expectations. With no iPhone, they set a September quarter record. And yet this article says a few times that Apple earnings showed that iPad and iMac sales can't make up for the iPhone. Well, first of all, there were also services. And second, they did. If they couldn't make up for them, then we would see a shortfall, wouldn't we? Katie Huberty expected them to come in at $60 billion. The rest of Wall Street, give or take a couple of people, the rest of Wall Street expected them to come in at $64 billion, and they came in over that. And they did that without the iPhone. A lot of that was driven by the iPad, and a lot of that was driven by the Mac. How can you say that Apple earnings show strong iPad and Mac sales can't make up for the iPhone? They did. CEO Tim Cook proudly announced double-digit year-over-year growth in all product categories besides iPhone on the call, but the iPhone is important. Apple's total revenue was up only 1% year-over-year, with iPhone revenue down almost 21%. That was the thing I was talking about yesterday, how they all kept saying that Apple, the demand for iPhone was double digits up until the middle of September, because that's your comparison, right? Up until the middle of September 2019, all you had was iPhone XS to offer people. Up until the middle of September 2020, you still only have the iPhone 11 until sometime in October. The whole thing just makes me mad. And I know it's ridiculous. And the thing is, I don't care what you say about Apple. What makes me mad is the lack of critical thinking. Or the deciding, well, here's the story I want to tell, so I'm just going to tell that story and bang the rest. Apple's increasing emphasis on services is a well-trodden story at this point, but it continued in Cook's remarks. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it boring that Apple is going to have 600 million paid subscriptions by the end of this year? A recently raised target? Is it boring that they picked up 35 million paid subscriptions in the past 3 months and 135 million in the past 12 months? It's a well-trodden story. Heard it. Keeps generating revenue hand over fist. I almost said something over tea kettle. And I realized that would be cursing. Now, a number of analysts were bothered that Apple declined to give guidance. This is brought up in this Ars Technica story. Kind of don't blame them. Here's what Ars Technica says. Apple also declined yet again to give guidance for the next quarter, a practice it and some other companies have stuck true throughout the pandemic, given the global uncertainties involved. Hey, did we mention the election? Hey, did we mention the rising number of COVID cases? Some analysts had thought that Apple might return to giving guidance this quarter, but with COVID cases on the sharp rise in some regions, including the US, it seems that was not in the cards just yet. If, as long as you can get away with not giving guidance, why wouldn't you? And I'm not saying, look, they're probably happy to not be on book, right? They still said that they were bullish. They still said that they were excited. They still said that, initial data around iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro is exciting. Of course, they can't really weigh that because they haven't set up orders for the Mini and the Pro Max yet. And yet, this guy was not the only one to say that. Who else? I've got another one here. Gentleman Jim Suva over at Citi. This marks the third quarter in a row where Apple did not give financial guidance. We fully understand the prior 2 quarters when society was largely locked down due to COVID-19. However, our view is society is gradually getting back to a new normalcy with retail stores, schools, and on-site work locations gradually reopening. So we're a bit surprised Apple did not give an outlook. Well, it was just yesterday or the day before that France and Spain both locked themselves down again. I think I saw Michael Stieber on 9 to 5 Max say that France is closing, Apple is closing all of its Apple stores in France again because of the uptick in COVID cases. His talk of the new normalcy, I just don't get. We haven't gotten to anything like normal yet. Every time we get close to something normal, cases start going back up again, and we start having to shut stuff down again. Either that or we just say we don't care and we're going to go outside anyway. And some people are going to get sick and some people are going to die, and that's going to be okay. That doesn't really seem to be Apple's way on all of this. I want to go outside. I want to go to an Apple store. I want to go hang out at an Apple store. You can't go hang out at an Apple store anymore. And that might start to bother people at some point. Probably won't, because Apple has done a fantastic job of shifting a lot of its workforce to the online thing and a lot of its shoppers to the online thing as well. But we don't know what's going to happen. To say that we're returning to a new normalcy, all we're returning to is people trying to open. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I have a friend who has 2 kids at college right now, and both of those colleges, are doing exceptionally well as far as testing and as far as what they do when they find somebody who is actually tested positive. So that's working for them. Other places it's not working so well for. Major League Baseball was locked down. But they pulled the guy from the game in the 6th inning, was it? Because during the game, they found out he had tested positive for COVID-19. He's been on lockdown. He's been secured away. He still somehow ended up with COVID-19. How do you talk about a new normalcy at this point? And so if Apple can then not say, here's our guidance, if they can instead provide color, which they did, why put themselves out on that limb? Still, the person from Ars Technica argues when Apple did not do that, that means that analysts, investors, and other observers have no idea how well Apple expects the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro to sell. Currently, 2 out of 4 new iPhone models this season are already shipping, so we'll see how those numbers come out in the next quarter, which is usually Apple's best, precisely because of those iPhone sales. I can't have it both ways. That's probably going to happen. It's probably going to be a stellar quarter for Apple because, the one question is, one of the financial analysts that I have down here as well brought it up. The question is, are they going to be able to keep up with demand? Because it's not just, the people who always buy the new iPhone as soon as the new iPhone comes out that you have to worry about. It is also holiday shopping. It's also people who are just, going out to buy the new thing because it's Christmas. So, no, not going out to buy the new thing. You got a couple of things there that are going to lead to a lot of demand. And the question is going to be, is Apple going to be able to keep up with it? Air quality indications in Chengdu says that they're doing their best. But we don't know. That's the thing. There are a couple of ways this could go. Demand could be so great that Apple doesn't want to guide because they would have missed it wildly, although that's probably not as likely. They always used to under-promise and over-deliver. They would say, gosh, we don't know, maybe we'll do this. And then, of course, they would crush it. They would knock it out of the park. I don't know if that was intentional or if they really just didn't understand what they had at the time. Tim Cook is less likely to do that now. Or maybe it was Peter Oppenheimer back in the day. He was the CFO. Now the CFO is Luca Maestri. Maybe it's all of them getting together. I don't know how that works. But gone are the days where Apple would say, aw shucks. And they could have done some aw shucks guidance. They could have guided, below what they know they're going to do, except there's no knowing what we're going to do because As unfun as it is to talk about, there is so much uncertainty right now. I don't blame him for not guiding. A few other analysts that I wanted to go over really quickly. Remember why, so why don't we just do the headlines instead? Daniel Ives of Wedbush. Headline beat with iPhone revenue falling short. Focus on the iPhone 12 trajectory, he says. Katie Huberty of Morgan Stanley. All signs point to a super cycle. Kind of curious if she's going to get some blowback because she was so off on expectations. JP Morgan analyst Samik Chatterjee, robust results across products and services despite the headwind from product delay. Harsh Kumar of Piper Sandler walked away confident, iPhone 12 ramp coming. And finally, Amit Daryanani of Evercore analyst, of Evercore, not of Evercore analyst because he's the guy. Ignore the noise, as iPhone units will be stronger for longer. So says Mr. Daryanani. Ad Rock, I like to call him. I will say really quickly, just so you don't think that I'm beating up on people who are beating up on Apple, there was also a headline from Apple Apple shows us what might have happened sans COVID-19. Sans COVID-19. No, it didn't. You can't show us what would have happened sans COVID-19. That is exactly what Tim Cook said on the call. Somebody asked him, I can't remember who, I mentioned it yesterday while we were talking here, or I might have mentioned it on today's macOS Ken, but somebody asked him, Tim Cook's interpretation of it was basically, I think you're asking me, would this have been a better quarter without COVID-19? And he said, you can't run the experiment. I will say really quickly, I don't think this shows us anything. I think the reason we have the strength in Mac and the strength in iPad that we have today is because of COVID-19. It is because of the lockdown. Now, here's what's interesting. Those numbers get to stay up for a very long time because now that those people, 50% of them for both platform, now that those people have bought their first Mac or bought their first iPad, my guess is they're in. Retaining customers is, generally speaking, not a difficult thing for Apple to do. Getting them can be difficult because it costs more. How much is that Dell? $500. How much is that MacBook? You're starting at $1,000. That can be a hard hurdle to get over, or a high hurdle to get over, a hard wall to crawl, or whatever I should say there. Once people are in the ecosystem, they tend to stay, is the general conception. But you wouldn't have that many people getting into it, I don't think, if you didn't have work from home and schooling at home, which both CFO Maestri and Apple CEO Tim Cook talked about on yesterday's call. They have, and you don't want to be ghoulish, and that's what's terrible. It's the day before Halloween, so we can be ghoulish if you want to. You don't want to be ghoulish, but Apple has benefited from how ugly things are right now. The only thing that hurt them was the fact that they didn't have an iPhone. They didn't have the iPhone because of how ugly things are right now. But you know what happened? When they started releasing new iPhones, people were still virtually anyway lined up. There were actually pictures of lines last weekend. That struck me as short-sighted. Socially distanced, though, and with masks and, all that stuff. Rant over. It just got to me. And I know, look, I work for me, right? Through the support of advertisers, through support on Patreon, through people downloading podcasts and showing up for the live thing and all that stuff. I am supported by so much more than one guy saying, I need 500 words, right? I have the luxury of being able to sit and talk it all out for 20 minutes, and I can change my mind halfway through if I want to because I'm thinking about different stuff. Somebody told this guy, I need a story about this. See, I'm even being fair to the people who aren't fair. Like I'm running for office. Ken Ray, fair to the people who aren't fair. Fair to you. I'm Ken Ray, and I approved at least half of this message. Coming up in just a minute, I'm going to talk really quickly about Apple One. I can only talk about it quickly because I haven't actually played with it yet. First, I want to remind you about some other stuff that I do. I do a bunch of shows. I do Mac OS Ken, which happens Monday through Friday. I do the checklist brought to you by Secure Mac. That happens every Thursday. We tackle some security, something, sometimes with a guest, sometimes out on my own. Yeah, so that's a thing. You can find that at securemac.com/checklist or wherever you get podcasts. I do In a Few Minutes, which is a daily conversation show with a friend. Usually lasts about 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes it's about Apple stuff. Sometimes it's not. What will it be tomorrow? Well, it's Saturday tomorrow, so it won't be tomorrow. It's Monday through Friday. But you can find that wherever you get podcasts. Or all of this stuff you can find at macosken.com, MACOSKEN, macosken.com. Oh, and also I'm on YouTube. I'm not sure you've heard. Let's go really quickly over the Apple One stuff, and then I'll hit the chat room and talk to anybody who's there, and then we will all say have a good weekend to each other. Apple One. So Tim Cook just did this thing in the middle of the call yesterday, kind of like he did during the Time Flies event. During the Time Flies event, they spent all of this time talking about Apple Watch SE and Apple Watch Series 6 and the blood oxygen stuff and all of it. And did they talk about Fitness Plus then, or was that later? I think they talked about Fitness Plus then as well. So they had a bunch of stuff that they were talking about. And then Tim Cook, almost as a throwaway, said, oh, and you can go order the watches right now. And then kept going. So in the middle of his preamble yesterday, in the middle of his 15-minute prepared remarks before handing it over to Luca Maestri, before handing it over to the callers, the analyst for the Q&A, he said, we're really excited about Apple One, which people will be able to sign up for tomorrow. Since when? Well, I guess since he said it right then. Apparently, Luca Maestri had actually said it to somebody else earlier in the day as well. But there weren't even articles about it or press releases or anything. It was just all of a sudden we're listening to the call, and there's Tim Cook saying, oh, yeah, well, that thing, that's happening tomorrow. I will admit I went into a teeny tiny bit of a freak out because I have I think I only had 2 of them before today. I think I canceled Apple News Plus, anticipating Apple One coming more quickly than it did. Also, I wanted to give myself a tiny bit of a break from news, which didn't work. I just started finding news other places. But yeah, so I was, when they announced Apple One, paying roughly $29.99 a month anyway, because I have Apple Music, which is $10 a month. The storage, the 2 terabyte storage I already had, that's I think $10 a month, might be more actually. And then I had Apple News Plus, which I canceled but came back on too. So the Premier plan was going to be the one for me. And where I was freaking out was, how do I transfer? How do I decide? How do I move? How do I make sure that nothing gets lost or nothing gets changed? And of course, it's Apple and they're Apple services, so it's dead simple. If you're thinking about doing it, what you do is you go into settings on your phone, go to where subscriptions are kept. There's a thing that says Apple One and explains what it is. And it says, try it now, but you're not actually signing up for anything when you try it now. Personally, I would have made that a learn more because I was nervous about hitting the try it now thing because I didn't want something to happen without my express consent. But you click the thing that says try it now. And if you're like me, it goes blank like for half an hour because apparently I was trying to do it when everybody else was trying to do it too. Eventually, when I got in, though, what it does is it looks at what you're already subscribed to in Apple services and says, right, here's what we think would be best for you. Oddly enough, for me, it decided that Premiere would be best for me because I was already on the 2 terabyte thing. Probably just for that alone. That and music would probably be like, right, Premiere's the thing for you because are you really going to go back to 200 gigabytes? So it's just super simple. If you need to make a decision about it, obviously it would be a little bit more difficult for you. Going over really quickly what's offered. Individual includes Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, and 50 gigabytes of iCloud storage. That's $14.95 a month. The family bundle includes Apple Music, Apple TV, Apple Arcade, and 200 gigabytes of iCloud storage for $19.95, and that can be shared with up to 6 family members. Then Premiere. Look at me. Don't I look like a guy who would do Premiere? I got a beauty spot for crying out loud. And I got that song in my head too. Premiere, where available, includes Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, Apple News Plus, Apple Fitness Plus, and 2 terabytes of iCloud storage for $29.95 per month. That can be shared with up to 6 family members as well. A couple of caveats there. Apple Fitness Plus is not ready. Luca Maestri says it's going to be ready by the end of this quarter, which of course is the end of this year. That would be a great thing actually between Christmas and New Year, wouldn't it? Because you've been eating like a dandy. You've been eating, like crazy because of Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, a time for New Year's resolutions. Wouldn't surprise me actually if they make that part of a Apple Watch fitness, push at the start of the year. New Year's resolutions, get people signed up. The where available thing is because Apple does not have deals set up for Apple News Plus everywhere. I want to say it's the US, Canada, and isn't there one other place? Can't think of it off the top of my head. Now, what's funny is I was really excited about Apple Arcade when Apple Arcade first came out, and I signed up for Apple Arcade, and I played Grindstone until it got too difficult for me, which was several weeks, actually. Not like most games where I buy them and I play them for a day, and then I either get bored or I get frustrated and I stop. Grindstone was a lot of fun. There was another one, too, that I can't remember the name of right now. Elkhorn? Not Elkhorn. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I played that for a bit as well, but eventually I realized I wasn't playing games anymore, so I canceled it. And I put that $5 instead to a running app that I was using that I also now need to cancel because I've kind of stopped running. Still walking, not running. I'm very excited to have Apple Arcade back. I think I joked here yesterday. It'll be wonderful to once again have 100 games to ignore. I'm really going to try to actually, I'm going to hook it up to my Apple TV. I've got a game controller for my Apple TV. I want to try to find one game that I can just like go into and turn my brain off because I don't have that right now. The game that I played most recently is something called Upspell. And I love the game Upspell. It was done by a guy who used to work at Apple. It is his first app, and it's basically like if you've ever played Speed Scrabble or something like that. You get 7 letters. You put up the letters into a word as fast as you can, and then as soon as you submit that word, it gives you more letters. You got 2 minutes, and I really, really love that game, except for the part where I'm frustrated if I can't get up to a certain point. Like if I score less than 200, I feel like I was just an idiot. My high score now on that is like 350, which I'm sure is actually pretty low for people who really play games like this a lot. But for me now, it's just a constant frustration that I'm not hitting a certain number. And so I'm going to go to Apple Arcade and hopefully find a game that'll just let me, maybe there's a game where you can just like roll a ball, but not roll a ball in a certain amount of time. Just, like roll a ball. Yeah, that's fun. Isn't that pretty? Look at the shading. Look at the controls. Look how small your TV is. I guess you can always find some reason. Hey, that's going to do it for this weekend, or for today, rather, because, the weekend's coming up. This is the last thing I'm doing, for the day. Kind of excited. If you're here live in the chat room, please stay in the chat room. I will be by momentarily. If you're not here live, I think I mentioned this before, but just in case, we do this live Monday through Friday, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places. It is on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/KenRay. youtube.com/KenRay if you're finding the audio and want to find the live thing. Telling you missed a show today. Happy Halloween, everybody. Talk to you next week. All right, I'm going to stop the recording now, and then I'm going to come talk to you guys. Recording stopped. I'm going to come talk to you guys. All right, everybody. What is everybody saying? Alexi9 says hi. Hello. Ken says hi. Web Bixby says don't call him Webster. Your middle name starts with E, doesn't it, Webb? Figured that out recently. Not aware that we were doing formal wear tonight. Nah, it's cash. You kidding me? Excuse me. Where is the harpsichord? Man, Bill, that's seriously my life. Hey, do you guys know? So if you're a fan of metal, and not metal, but relatively hard rock, and if you're a fan of comedy, and you're okay with something being a tiny bit obscene, just a tiny bit, there is a fantastic band called The Upper Crust. Saw them years ago, and they're this weird band. They're from Boston. They one of their guys or two of their guys are architects. One of them was a speechwriter for Bill Clinton back in the day. Young, he was in his 20s when he was doing that. But their band, they basically are a group of 18th century dandies. So powdered faces, powdered wigs, outfits like the one I'm wearing now, except really nice. The time I saw them was in a club in Boston, and the candelabras all over the place. But I mean, it's like songs like "The Vulgar Tongue" and "Friend of the Working Class," and what's another one? "Let Them Eat Rock." You can't find everything that they do on Apple Music, but you can find some of what they've done on Apple Music. They're a little, like I say, they're not necessarily safe for work, but they're a lot of fun. Can't recommend them enough. Rob wants to know, has anybody signed up for Apple One that still has an old Apple ID used originally with iTunes and an iCloud account? They said they would make that possible, but curious how smooth the process is. I read an article about it, Rob, and I didn't 100% understand what they were saying. Basically, you can associate the two IDs with the one Apple One subscription, but it doesn't change anything. So you've still got two Apple IDs. You're just paying one price. Or paying one bill. Anyway, that's the article that I saw earlier. I might get into that more for Monday's macOS Ken. Excuse me. Haha. Yeah, it's a great question, Matthew. I wish I had an answer. Matthew says, I'm looking at it. Why don't they make Apple One mix and match? Why do I have to get the expensive one just to get the fitness when I don't care about Apple News or Arcade? Is Apple Fitness going to be Apple One exclusive, or will you be able to sign up for that by itself? Do we know? Because every one of the things that they offer right now is something that you can buy a la carte. So it's possible you'll be able to get it by itself, but I don't know. John was answering Rob's question earlier, so we are both repetitive and redundant. What else? Frank, that's rude. He's talking about the spelling of analyst. At least you, I assume, pronounce it correctly. Rob Walsh says it like it's spelled. Yeah, I'm with you, Bill. Bill says he would settle for a new normal where you can at least see normal from here. Or see normal from there. That'd be great. Ronald, I apologize because I missed your comments in the chat room yesterday, but he's saying that he nailed it. Predicted yesterday about Wall Street slapping Apple for having a good quarter. Partly. I think you're partly correct, but everything else I said was true as well. I don't think Apple dragged the entire market to the worst month since March. There's just so much bat guano crazy going on right now. Well, anyway, I'm partly there with you. Ron wants to know where Nicholas and Nicholas from Secure Mac have been. They're too busy working on Secure Mac, man. I know. I try to get them on the show from time to time, and I get to talk to Tone. Interesting. Bill says that Tim's just sort of casually throwing stuff out there as his version of one more thing. He used those words. He said one more thing for the introduction of Apple Watch. I think he will use those for Apple glasses eventually. I'm pointing to my glasses like these are they. They're not. These are Huawei. They're also not. Hank got his iPhone 12 Pro last night. Good for you, sir. Where else are we? Oh, interesting. Webb's still getting the blank screen when he goes to try Apple One. Yeah. Happened to me several times. And then all of a sudden I was staring at Apple One. So yeah. Nothing really has changed except now I have access to the games that I won't play, like I say. Oh, thanks, Amy. Amy says this was a swell show. Thank you. Sounds like the Dead Kennedys meets Amadeus. Who? The Upper Crust? I'm not as familiar with the Dead Kennedys music as I should be, so I can't really say. I've heard them, honestly, I've heard them compared to AC/DC. And AC/DC is a tiny bit harder, but I mean, they're in that vein, really. Upper Crust Official has a YouTube channel. Interesting. I did not know that, Roger. They've gotten some fairly, I mean, I make them sound like they're just a bunch of guys who play bars in Boston. They were that, but they also opened for Aerosmith. I want to say they opened for Prince at one point. I know they opened for Aerosmith. All right. I think we've hit the end. I mean, not, the end, but I think we've hit the end of the chat there. So I'm probably going to get out of here. Dead Kennedys were political. Jello Biafra still is. Yeah, that I'm aware of. I'm more aware of that, honestly, than I am of the Dead Kennedys. There were all these bands that friends of mine knew and liked in high school. Dead Kennedys, JFA, Suicidal Tendencies, Painful Discharge. That's great. Dead Kennedy sort of fell in that for me, so I missed it. Thanks, Webb. You have a great weekend, too. Everybody have a great weekend. I would ask what you're doing for Halloween, but I want the answer to be nothing, so I'm not going to ask. I'm sorry. I want the answer actually to be we're going trick-or-treating or we're going to a party. Especially on a Saturday night. Saturday night, full moon, clocks going back 1 hour. That's 1 extra hour of Halloween party. Says the guy who hasn't been to a Halloween party in 15 years, right? Really motoring this time. Jim, thank you. What I do. Anyway, I'm out. You guys have a wonderful Halloween. I'm going to go put on a costume now. Take care.